welcome back, everybody, to another Lullaby Tunes. Today's guest, we got iLL.Gates in the house. iLL.Gates, how the hell are you doing today, man? It's great to see you, man. It's great to see you. It's been great being in your course and everything like that, man. You've been a really big inspiration to my music as well as my journey as a producer. So I'm really glad to have you as a guest on the show. So why don't you tell the crowd a little bit about yourself?
Hey, what's up, everybody? So my name is Dylan. I'm known professionally as iLL.Gates when I make music. I've been really active, like as a full-time musician for, geez, like probably 15 years or something. And primarily I'm active in bass music, but I also make rap music and pop music sometimes, and really weird experimental music, down tempo, all over the map. I get bored easily with conventions, so I'm always trying to do whatever I haven't done before, which is like kind of objectively a terrible strategy for branding, but it's what I need to do for my mental health, and it keeps me coming back, keeps me productive and everything. So yeah, always trying new things, always learning new things, and yeah, I think I've got like 350 songs as iLL.Gates out at this point. There's quite a few. And yeah, I'm currently working on another new album, and pretty gassed about it. I just did a release on iBoga on vinyl, which was pretty
Oh,
fun.
no way.
Yeah, yeah, that was good. The orb was on the other side of the vinyl I was on. I was like, no way, the orb, like little fluffy
That's
clouds.
fire.
So my inner teenage Dylan was very excited about that. So that was pretty cool. Got a bunch more stuff coming up, but I got to be tight-lipped about it because it's working with people who are substantially more famous than me, and you gotta you can't spill the beans. But yeah, there's the biggest releases of my career are in the immediate future, suffice to say. So I'm pretty stoked about that. And I also am a dad. I have a family, live in Vancouver. So yes, it is possible to support a family as a musician in expensive cities. It's not so unrealistic as all that. And my mom and dad are both educators. My dad is a full-time guitar player and he teaches guitar. And then my mom used to run the Association of Canadian Publishers, and she then went on to become a teacher working with at-risk youth, and especially in the First Nations community in Canada, who've had a rough go in schooling, suffice to say. And so teaching is always something that I've placed a great importance on, and it's awesome because, like, if I have an apple and I give you the only apple, I no longer have an apple. But if I have an idea and I share that idea with you, we both have that idea. So it's a great way to create more. And I've always really enjoyed it. And the whole be the change you want to see in the world thing. Well,
Absolutely.
I was coming up, I had a very frustrating time finding a lot of the information that I needed, and really just needed another producer who was more experienced than I am to just sit me down and say, hey, relax. Everything's going to be just fine. Just do these things in this order, and you'll be all right. And so I over time, whenever I found out different little things like that were helpful, I shared them, and then that slowly grew into like mentoring people and finishing people's tracks for them and stuff, which if you are an up and coming musician and you are good but you are not famous, you can still make a living at music if you do mixing and mastering or ghost production. And then that kind of led to doing a bit of like work for video games and app sounds and stuff. I did a bunch of sounds for the Windows Phone. And then over time, I started teaching workshops. And then eventually I was like, why am I teaching the same room of people? There's different rooms of people, the same thing again and again. I should record this.
Like, hey,
And
John, nice to see you again.
yeah, exactly. It's just like, I don't know, it got repetitive. So I recorded this workshop called the ill methodology that really blew up. And then that kind of led to a community of students sort of forming. And eventually they convinced me to start Producer Dojo. And but the whole community, Producer Dojo, it's all basically built by the community and for the community, and when you surround yourself with like awesome people and kind of listen to them and let them do their thing, awesome people will do awesome stuff. And over time, that has become Producer Dojo, which is a record label with nearly 100 releases on it now, as well as an awesome music community that is just spitting out top level musicians. And basically, like my whole career is pretty much like the main driver of all the big gigs and stuff that I get, at least as a producer, is people that I teach going on to become way more famous than me and then coming back and saying, hey, thanks, dude. Do you want to do a remix or let's do a collab or whatever? So like I never would have got to work with like Gucci Mane or Alanis Morissette or 42 Dog or any number of these like huge artists that I've got to work with, if it weren't for the fact that I taught and the people who study with me go on to do awesome, huge things. So yeah, over time it's gotten crazy. It's like, like Seal from like Kiss from a Rose. Seal uses the
Yeah, yeah.
infinite drum rack and loves it. Like Claude Von Stroke was using my DJ templates and Pretty Lights and DJ Vadim, Morgan Page, Damian Taylor, who's got like 10 Grammy nominations. He took the ill methodology when he was stuck and it got him unstuck. And then he produced like Bjork and Arcade Fire
Oh,
and
wow.
Prodigy. And he uses my Moog subs on all of his like Grammy nominated records. So it's like the same multi-sample that I give everybody when I'm like, this is a really good sub bass. It's from Moog.
I can agree.
Yeah. And then, like G Jones, Chi. I got photos of a young Mr. Bill as a teenager at one of
Oh,
my,
no way.
yeah. Yeah, it's pretty wild. Oh yeah, and then I also like created the first ever commercial Ableton DJ templates back in 2006. And no one had ever sold a template at that point. And there's still like, there's not been much improvements on that system since 2006, which is pretty wild. But there just haven't been that many new DJ features of Ableton, but a lot of people are still using my templates like, a decade plus later. They still do the job. But when I was the only person doing that, because I was the only person doing that, I would end up with all these like, big acts who would hit me up to help them with their live set in Ableton. And that led to a lot of doors opening, like the String Cheese guys and Ioto. Like, I mean, like, yeah, Jason Hahn from Ioto was like blowing me up when I was like 22 or something because I helped him with his IAC MIDI loopback technique. And that led to a lot of doors opening too. But yeah, if there's been one kind of consistent lesson of my trajectory, it's that when you pay it forwards and hook people up, not all of them, but some of them will eventually come back and hook you up. And it's been pretty great. And I'm really proud of everyone that I've taught who's gone on to do big things. And I'm really grateful for, being able to take a non-traditional path through what is traditionally quite a toxic industry. But I've managed to stay healthy and sane for like 20 years of music making. It's been fun the whole time. I still love music just as much as when I started. And yeah, now I got a kid to share it with. And it's been really awesome watching her like, you know, Like I'll make her noodles, and she'd be like, Daddy, get in here. I go in there, she's like, these ones sound different. You should sample it. And then she'll be like making squish noises. So she has this like folder of voice memos on my phone with all these ridiculous samples that we make music with.
Oh, that's
It's,
awesome.
yeah, it's pretty fun. She's really good at spotting samples that I wouldn't necessarily notice too, because like they're just way less jaded about things. Like I
Right.
wouldn't like, that's the spaghetti to sample. Like that's just not
That's
something I
it.
would have noticed.
That's the one.
And it was because she had me make it with ramen noodles, which was unusual. And the ramen
Okay.
noodle texture did make the spaghetti more more sonically interesting.
I'm sure that you have like a certain amount of pride whenever you do see all of your students grow on to be like doing bigger things and whatnot. And I'm sure that like whenever you do feel that, that definitely feels like a gratifying thing for you, doesn't it? Like it's pretty
Yeah,
cool to
and
do.
I mean it kind of like it hits a little bit of a different level too. Like I mean, I'm really stoked when one of my tracks gets big and everything. But there's times when like I don't know, you can get a little cynical about it and be like, ah, is what I'm doing really matter? Like, it's all just ego and self-aggrandizement. I don't know. But when you teach people something and it goes on to like change their lives and they're genuinely stoked about it, and it feels a lot more like it's making a positive difference than,
Absolutely.
just like getting numbers on the line goes up chart.
Number go up. So I want to rewind a little bit, right? You said that you make tons of different kind of music because you get bored a little easier and whatnot, right? So when we talk about that kind of thing, and you said that how that could potentially like damage your branding and whatnot, what would be the specific reason why kind of thing? Because I see now more and more, right? Say for instance, Wales, for instance, is a perfect example of somebody that hasn't stuck to one specific sound kind of thing. He gyrates around and he came out the get-go with that. Do you think it's more important now to curate your sound into one genre versus just having a sonic signature that you apply across the spectrum?
Yeah, I think genres are primarily for like record stores and music reviewers, like the way electronic music genre is kind of calculated, at least traditionally, is based on BPM and beat structure. And that was because those labels were for selling things to DJs who would buy vinyl records for their sets, and they'd want to make sure that they'd fit in their niche or whatever. But over time, genre has become less and less important, but style and focus with your sound is just as important as it ever was, arguably more so because, you know, an AI can spit out an instance of genre X, etc. But if you want to make music that is going to stand out in a world where anyone can just type whatever they want into UDO and get like a radio sounding tune, it's even more essential now to cultivate a fresh original style and to kind of like iterate on that in such a way that you can own that sonic niche, whatever it is. It may not be defined by beat structure, as DJ genres in the past were, but it is important to have that personal artistic signature. Perhaps it's a set of emotions that you like to explore. Perhaps it is a particular sound design method that is bespoke to your work, or perhaps it's something else, but it's really, really important to define what your project is about and not about, because when you like in the mind of the public, every brand fits into a category of some kind. And when I say brand, I don't mean just like your artist logo and what it looks like on the flyer. Like that's like an example of visual branding, but branding as an artist is that set of characteristics in the mind of the public which distinguishes your work from the work of others, which distinguishes you as an artist from all of the other artists out there. Um, your brand might not necessarily be what you intend. You know, it's something that exists in the mind of the public, right? So it's like, you know, a lot of the time when I talk to artists who are starting out, and I'll start talking to them about branding, and they're like, "Oh, that's way, way down the line. Like, I don't know what I want. I don't know what I gotta you know, think about the music before I think about the logo, right?" And it's like, you know, brand is not just a logo. Like, what does Madonna's logo look like? You know, but you know what her brand's all about. You can dress up as Madonna for Halloween, but like, what font does she use? Are there serifs? Is there an underline? I don't
Is it
know.
Comic Sans?
Yeah, it could be Comic Sans. I have no idea, but she has a very clear brand, or like Vanilla Ice, you know, like his brand may not be what he intends, but there is a brand that exists in your mind when I say the word Vanilla Ice, right? So like, you know, your brand is really just like what your project is about. Like, what are you trying to do? Why do that and not something else, right? So for every brand that exists in the mind of the public, there's like a kind of a ladder. And this is detailed in the book Positioning by Al Reese, which is really important to understand as artists. But basically, each category of thing in the mind of the public will have a number one, a number two, a number three, and so on down the ladder. So, like, you know, if you like breakfast cereals, you might have like Cheerios at the top, and then like Frosted Flakes, and then like whatever other brands. And like in your mind, you'll have a hierarchy of those brands. And when brands get into trouble, right, is when they are going after a niche that is already completely dominated, right? Like if you're trying to be a turntablist, for example,
Right.
even though Qbert has not competed since the 90s, in the mind of the public, most people, when they think of like DMC champion scratch DJs, Qbert is the name that comes to their mind. And like turntablists have innovated a lot since the 90s, especially when it comes to like digital turntablism and controllerism. And like, you know, if you check out like the Goldie Awards now, they have like beat battles and stuff. And it's just like it's a completely different playing field, a different ball game, almost a different art form. But it's really hard to be the number one scratch DJ in the world when everybody already thinks of Qbert as that and probably always will. You know, he's like the Mike Tyson of turntablism, right? So when you're going after a niche that is so thoroughly established in the mind of the public, you know, you might end up being like number 97 on that list. And it's hard, don't no matter how good you are, it's hard to claw your way up in such an established field, right? So when artists do really well is when they can create a new category that they can brand such that their branding of that category kind of becomes the name of that category. So, you know, if you say, pass me a Kleenex, even if you have a non-Kleenex branded box of tissues, you're going to know what I mean. You're going to reach out, you're going to grab me a tissue and you're going to hand it to me. Right.
Right.
So, there are, or like Uber, you know, you could be calling a non-Uber rideshare app, but they've managed to, by hook or by crook, mostly crook, completely dominate that space such that when you think of a rideshare, you think of an Uber, right? So when artists do really well is when they carve out a fresh niche of some sort within the landscape of music that they can fully dominate and become like the person for that niche. Um, and then, you know, they can be like, hey, I'm the best at this and not be wrong. Right. But what happens where brands get into trouble, and oftentimes where artists get into trouble, is what's called line extensions or brand extensions, which is where like, you know, maybe lifesavers will try to make like a chewing gum, or you know, the new Coke, for example, was like you know, another failure where they were like,
Yep.
like there are times when brands will try and do something. They'll either try and reinvent the formula that they own that got them in their awesome position, or they will go do something that is so different that their fans get upset. And I mean, this is true with like social media profiles, for example. I found this Reddit post where there's this girl who like awkwardly reviews parking lots, and it was like a really funny post. So I followed her on Instagram and I was like, this is great. And I'm like, she'd review parking lots
I
and
think I've seen her too.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
would give it a thumbs up and everything. And I was great. And I had interacted with enough of these posts that they were coming up on my feed. And then like, she comes up and she's like, hey, what's up? My new album's out. And I'm like, that's not what I signed up for. Like I'm here for parking lot reviews. Like, what, and I mean, it was cool and all, but it was like I was I I I don't think I clicked the like button that day. It threw me for a loop. I was like, I thought this was the parking review channel, right?
Was it a good album though? Did you listen to any of it?
I only listened to a couple seconds of it. I was mostly just like I was just like I needed to know where the good parking lots were.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, she goes into a lot of detail on those
Yeah, she
too.
goes hard. They're great reviews. They're
Oh
really good.
yeah. Oh yeah.
But yeah, so where brands can often get into trouble is where they do something different. Or like a classic example would be Getter when he launched his Tara Reid side project rapping, that
Yep.
was very clearly not Getter doing something different, different brand, different name, no
Completely
fallout,
different.
no
Right.
fallout to the Getter project. But when Getter launched his Visceral tour, which was a complete audio reimagining of the Getter sound, he went from having this like kind of diverse, like heavy bass party sound to being like, okay, I'm going to do some more like intelligent music. I'm going to put a lot of time and thought into crafting it. It's going to be very specific in its branding and focus, etc. And it was, I think, some of his best music.
I
But
agree.
when he presented it to the public, it was like visceral tour, and it had all this like super like metal like crazy branding that would not
Yep.
be out of place in like a bro step kind of context. So his audience came there expecting bro step, and they were blindsided by like intelligent artsy fartsy music, and it was like a mutiny. It was crazy. His fans ate him alive on the internet, and he had to cancel the tour, etc., because he was essentially pulling a bait and switch. Whereas if he'd launched it as a side project where fans had a different set of expectations, as he did with the Tara Reid project, that same visceral album could have been the thing that like propelled him to a whole other level in his career, right? So I've come to understand over time and with lots of real world examples of my friends, trying and succeeding and trying and failing, I have come to understand that the reason why artists will have a side project is not because they're like, oh, let's roll the dice again. Maybe I'll strike it rich this time. It's to protect the brand positioning of the original project, and it's really important for you to be focused as an artist when you're coming up with your musical style, whether that be within an existing genre or not. But figuring out like what is your style all about? What are you saying with your music? What are you focusing on? What are you for? What are you against? What rules do you follow? What rules do you break? Getting clear about it, writing them out in a list. I like to call it like a style manifesto. I really encourage everybody to make a style manifesto where you like really analyze the styles of your heroes, what makes them stand out, and then make like a Dungeons and Dragons type character sheet where you're like, okay, these are all the dimensions that I've noticed when I was studying my heroes. Where do I land in these dimensions? What's important? What's unimportant? Etc. And really like really getting clear about that style and focus like at the outset, because your music is your brand. It's not just the makeup that you put on the front of your project. It's the actual music itself that is your brand, at least in the mind of the public. And if you're duking it out for the number 30 spot on some hierarchy that's, set in stone, like the Parthenon, you're gonna have a much harder time than if you just like stop giving a fuck, get weird, find something that works for you, and then own it. So, yeah. So I mean, I would say branding has been like a major focus in my educational efforts, especially lately. And I actually have the world's only course on musical style. I was stunned when I was doing research for my course to find out that there is quite literally no other course on musical style. So my course is called Elevating Your Style. It goes into a lot more detail on these topics. And you can watch, there's a Elevating Your Style video, which is on YouTube for free and the @Producer Dojo YouTube account. But that has been a pretty big breakthrough for a lot of people because oftentimes people think like, oh, I just got to learn the nuts and bolts of production and then I'll think about that stuff later. And to an extent, that's true. You may end up having a first pancake alias as you are learning your trade. But the sooner you can get clear and focused about that, the better. It makes the learning process easier because just like, the Sex Pistols didn't learn how to do anything other than bar chords because they didn't need to. There may be large areas of music that you consider weaknesses that may not actually be weaknesses. They may just be things that you don't need to focus on. And when you put time and effort into figuring out what your style is about, there is less to learn and you can focus on leveraging your strengths as opposing filling in weaknesses that may not actually matter,
Right,
right?
right. Which brings me to my next question. This is a great great intro to the next topic, right? So let's go back into the education side of things, right? Being a class of 808 member in the producer dojo, I feel like there's distinct advantages compared to a traditional like music course, especially in today's day and age. You got a lot of different programs, a lot of different opportunity and courses to go through, but I would love for you to go over what makes the class of 808, what makes Producer Dojo stand out? Because I know a couple of things, but I want to hear it from you because you offer something that's different from me just going to my local college and taking a music class, or me going to like the top like whatever named like companies that do electronic music specifically kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that comes from my own experiences in education. A lot of the differences stem from that. But when it comes to creative fields, there are certain fundamental differences with the way human motivation works when it comes to learning. So, like, psychologists have identified two primary types of motivation, and this was Ed Deci at the University of Rochester in the 70s who figured this out. And there are some things about psychology that are kind of like not super scientific, like Carl Jung and like archetypes and stuff. That's like it's cool and interesting to talk about. And then there are other things that are a little bit more sciency with like actual experiments and results and statistical analysis and stuff, right? Ed Desi's work at the University of Rochester on motivation was, actual science. And they found out that humans have two primary types of motivation. There is extrinsic motivation, which is external, which is where you do things for to gain reward and to avoid punishment. And this is the kind of like classic BF Skinner operant conditioning, like Pavlov's dog. You ring the bell and the dog drools because it associates the bell with feeding time, right? And there is still a subset of people who basically believe that free will is an illusion and that humans are automatons to be managed with the carrot and the stick. The carrot and the stick are excellent when you need to motivate people to alphabetize insurance forms for 12 hours a day and not wonder where their dreams went. But when you need someone to do a creative task, usually intrinsic motivation has more efficacy. So intrinsic motivation is motivation from internal factors. You do the thing because it's fun, because you love it, because it's beautiful, because the thing is rewarding in and of itself. Things like skateboarding, playing the drums, etc. Right? Those are intrinsically motivated tasks, and they found out at the University of Rochester that extrinsic motivation can actually be actively detrimental when learning creativity. So this is why second album syndrome is a thing. And if you have a band that makes the best record ever when they're starving, working out of their buddy's garage, and then you drive a truckload of money up to their house, and then they're just suddenly like, you know what? It's just not as fun now. Let's go do cocaine and complain about our rich person life, and that's
Yep.
what happens, right? So knowing this, and having some experience studying martial arts, I opted instead for a martial arts kind of belt style system at producer Dojo, where the idea is to not grant a diploma or anything like that, because what are you going to be like, here's my audio diploma, go follow me on SoundCloud? Like, not how it works. The only thing that matters is the music. So really, the structure is about getting people to get really clear about their goals, about what they're trying to do, turn those goals into a checklist of actions with due dates on the calendar, take accountability for that game plan and those due dates, and then have weekly accountability meetings with a third party to hold you accountable. And that is like an intrinsic motivation strategy that is really, really effective. And then we used to do only year memberships, but after learning about Lally's research on habit formation, as well as some of Gail Matthews' research at Dominican University in California, we, those three goal setting factors, the intrinsic goal setting factors, those are from Gail Matthews at Dalhousie, at Dominican. And then Lally's research basically found that if you're creating a new habit, 66 days is kind of the average for a new habit to take over. So we do 90-day programming now, because 90 days is like, you're definitely gonna, more enough people will get it. Because if it's 66, only half of the people will get it,
Right.
right? Whereas 90 is like, anything past that is like the laggards, so that's like the bulk. That's like 80% of people will establish that habit. And then James Clear's excellent book, Atomic Habit, is all about how small habits that seem almost insignificant, that those goals are so small, repeated daily and tracked, will lead to you getting a streak going. And then there's a loss aversion. It's like a cognitive bias where we value losses more than we value gains. So like, it's worse to lose $100 than it is to gain $100 randomly, right? You'll remember the loss of $100 randomly much more
Right.
than you'll remember finding $100 on the ground. So uh so we have adopted this Gail Matthews strategy, and then we do 90 days of habit tracking. We've partnered with a habit tracking app where you can track habits for free, and we've got like a scoreboard and everything. And we do this thing every year called Remix Your Life, where it's like a habit tracking challenge. And in past years, the people who always did the best were the ones who had the smallest goals on their habit tracker. So like 5 minutes of studio a day. And chances are, if you're doing it every day, there's going to be some days where you go more than 5 minutes. As the habit develops, you go longer and longer kind of naturally. But if you're like, okay, I'm going to do like an hour of producing every day and an hour of DJing every day, then I'm going to work out for an hour, and I'm going to meditate for an hour, and I'm going to cook dinner for an hour. It's like, there eventually there's a day where you're just like, there's too much, and then you lose your streak. And then once you lose your streak, it's hard to get it going again, and blah 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 blah. Whereas if you have like the smallest possible daily goals tracked religiously, the streak provides all the motivation that you need. So these kind of like, more modern psychological approaches to education are far better than the bulimic model of education. Regurgitate what we told you onto this, standardized testing form. I call it the bulimic model of education because it's really just information in, information out, binge and purge and forget. It doesn't lead to lasting knowledge. It doesn't lead to applied knowledge, doesn't lead to music fans, that's for sure. And that knowledge, like that whole system of education, is based on like fucking Henry Ford, BF Skinner, and stuff. Like way back in the day, they were like, "Hey, Henry Ford, love what you've done with the factory. Could you do that, but like the people?" And he was like, "Yeah, no problem. Have I told you about Hitler? He's great." But yeah, so yeah, Henry Ford was really he's key driver of the current bulimic model of education. But it's outdated. It's and a lot of schools are kind of coming around to it, but institutions and bureaucracy move a lot slower than Producer Dojo does. So our crew has been getting crazy results for quite a while now. It's been awesome.
So we're at like 3 minute and 45-second mark. What I want to do first is I want to go ahead and play a little track that you sent me here. You got me a nice high quality video. And then last thoughts would be telling me about the producer path, because I know that's something that you got up and coming there. We might even have to go over a little bit. We'll see what happens. But I'll go ahead and play this real quick, and then we'll rock and roll from there. Sound good?
Sounds good.
She said, "Could I hold her hair with ice? Cold as a polar bear."
Ice cream.
All right. So we just got done listening to that 30-second Gucci Mane remix that you got going on there. First off, that's a fatty. I love the beats as well as the music video, the glitchy effects, the girls, all that jazz, man. It's very fun tune. Tell me a little bit about that. What was the like approach to that? How did it even come to be?
Okay, so iLL.Gates is Dojo, like many in the dojo, he went on to become pretty huge. He's one of the more recent dojo results. And he initially found success in trap music. He's working with a lot of top artists. Like he has like the last tune with Prodigy from Mobb Deep before he died, and like worked with went on tour with Ghostface Killah, and was working with like all these huge rappers. And he is a cool person, and I gave him lots of extra like time and attention, and he was like, "Hey, I should hook Dylan up." So when he did that track with Gucci Mane, he asked me to do a remix. And he's also Ionize is one of those dudes who's just like top level good at everything he does. Like he has all these pieces of art that are like 10 grand, 50 grand in his house. I went over this one. I'm like, "Oh, this one is really awesome." Like, well, like, I went to art school and stuff. Like I know technique when I see it. And he was like, "Oh yeah, that's one of mine. I was taking art classes for a bit there." I'm like, "Oh, come on, buddy. Come on." But yeah, so he's like one of those people who's like amazing at everything he does. And he made this awesome music video for the original. So I got my homie from blacklake.io, who does a lot of my videos, to do a remix of it. And he loaded the original Ionize video onto a bunch of like broken VHS tape machines, and then sampled them and remixed them. So that's why it's got this like weird kind of gritty VHS look. So Ionize let me, handle the remix EP for the Gucci Mane one, and the video like blew up and got like 3 million plays. It's like probably my most popular YouTube video, so I'm pretty stoked about that. And then we did another one later for a track called "Look What I Got" over the pandemic with 42 Doug and Raekwon's brother. He does one of the verses on it too. But yeah, that one's really cool. And then I got to curate that remix EP too. So I got Rip Kenny on it, who's super amazing, obviously.
Shout out Rip
And
Kenny.
then we got EPROM, And then I put EEPROM together with Blacklake to do the music video, and the
Nice.
EEPROM remixes music video is like chef's kiss. I'm really, really stoked about it. So, I mean, while I didn't actually make the video, I, curated the remix EP and got Ionize and EEPROM together and got EEPROM and Blacklake together, and the results were magic. But yeah, Ionize, his style has taken a bit of a journey. He's more making like, like heavy rhythm and stuff these days, but his trap songs are huge and the music videos are really great. You should definitely check them out, see what the Dojo does to people. But yeah, that
Dojo
was,
effect.
yeah, the Dojo effect is real. Apache is another recent Dojo output, and Ravenscoon,
Oh, no
those
way.
guys,
Both of them?
those guys are all Dojo too. But yeah, Apache is awesome. He's nice enough to give me a testimonial for the website too. I was like, oh,
No
thanks.
way. I
Yeah.
didn't know that part. That's actually really awesome.
Yeah, that's why I got to do that remix for Kung Fu before he was like super big,
No way.
when he was just getting big. Yeah, it's because like he really liked the old methodology, and put my tricks to work in designing his lifestyle and career. And so he hit me up, so I got to do that remix for Kung Fu, which is awesome. He's like I don't think they're about to hire me anymore. He's like stratosphere level now,
Oh
but
yeah. Oh yeah.
that
It's
Renaissance
crazy.
record, that was like my album of 2020 for real. Like
Absolutely.
that.
I remember talking about that with you too. Like that was definitely one of those ones when as soon as I said it, we had a full-on conversation about that when you were here in town, kind of thing. But yeah, like that's really awesome. Like you said, like it's all about like, a rising tides raise all ships, right? Whenever we're putting in that time, whenever we're helping fill other people's cups, they in turn 9 times out of 10 fill yours back up too, right? So there's one other topic that I want to make sure we get to today, and that's the producer path. I know this is one of your newer things that you're doing, and like everything, I'm sure it's going to be absolutely fucking awesome. You know what I mean? So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the producer's path came about after doing the Remix Your Life challenge as a year-long challenge every year for a while. And I noticed that the people who had the smallest goals and the people who were the most hardcore about habit tracking were able to do the biggest things. And then I had known about the Gail Matthews research at Dominican, and I had known about the Lally research on habit formation for a while, but I hadn't actually implemented it in a course design until the producer's path. And basically, like, when it started, the dojo started, I was doing like really, I was a lot more hands-on because there was like only a handful of people. I was like under 20 people in the dojo when it first started. But I make a class every week, and over time the dojo grew to thousands of people. And my weekly download, I've been doing a different class every week, and in 10 more it's weekly download number 400. So when you have a newer producer and you're like, here's 400 classes, it's like having another YouTube, because like a lot of my I mean, a lot of my words have kind of come out into the general production knowledge, like 128s and mud pies and like timer beats and
I
a lot of
swear
these
by
other
all of those.
concepts. Yeah, a lot of those concepts, like you'll see people who don't even know who I am using my words, all the time. It's awesome. But one thing that I had, anyway, so when you get behind there, there's a lot going on, and a lot, like it's like a whole other system of terminology, because I don't want to make shit public, because then people just knock off your tutorials and don't give you credit, and then Chat GPT will devour them too. Usually Chat GPT or hack YouTubers will do a worse job of teaching it. So yeah, after like when I made the infinite drum rack and that blew up in like 2011 maybe, there were so many other people trying to teach the 128s technique, but they were teaching it wrong. And then like I'd run into people who were like, oh yeah, I tried 128s, but I hated it because of this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, yeah, you didn't actually try 128s. You tried the knockoff YouTube version of 128s. But when you learn the actual technique and then I teach them, they'd be like, oh, of course this is the best, So Anyway, so I've kept most of my stuff behind the paywall for the whole time. And you know, I do put a lot of stuff out on the Producer Dojo YouTube channel, but having this like huge amount of classes was not really that productive. Like it made sense to give everybody every class when there was like 50, but when
Right.
there's 400, it's like it's a lot. So drawing from that material and drawing from the suggestions of the members, everybody was like, look, you need to give us you know, linear program where it's just like, you know, do this, then do that, then do this, then do that, put one step in front of the other and you'll get there. So I was like, okay, well, that's what the community wants. Like I'm a very non-linear person. Like my D&D alignment would be chaotic good for sure. But you know, I listen. I listen. And people were like, give us a linear format. So I was like, okay, well, if we're gonna do that, then I want to take into account the atomic habit research, as well as the Lally research and the Gail Matthews research and the Ed Desi research. And I made this program that was like designed with behavior science at the front and with habit tracking at the front and with like, you know, community feedback at the front. So for the last year, after I made the first version, we were like basically guinea pigging it on people, and it's crazy. Like if you see, there's this video that I chopped up where it was like, because like I have these community design meetings where people would like get together and we talk about making the course better and stuff. And all those like videos that you see of people freaking out about the course, that's just from one of those meetings. Like I wasn't like, send me testimonials, you know? That was just like, it was a Zoom meeting. So it was recorded. So I just chopped it up. And it's like, even editing it down, like 3 minutes was the shortest I could make all of the freak out moments, even just like one word per thing. Some of the like people are just love it, you know, and the results that people have been getting have been just crazy. So it's now out of beta and it's in its you know, forever form, and that is Producer's Path 2.0. And it's like super light workload, you know, 5 minutes habit tracking a day using the habit tracking app. There's like one video that's between an hour and 2 hours that you can watch each week. And then there's one assignment that takes about, you know, an afternoon, like 4 hours. And that's it. As long as you can set aside an afternoon a week and then 5 minutes a day and then the video, watch the video, that's it. It's like a very achievable amount of time, even if you have a family and a job and stuff. And because it's been designed so meticulously, and it's really, you know, we've put habit tracking, branding, style, finding your artistic voice, all that stuff is like at the forefront. And it, you know, when you focus on the right things in the right order, you put your style first, you figure out what you're actually saying rather than trying to just assemble a pastiche of your influences, and, you know, focus as much on unlearning as on learning. The results are insane. Like people are killing it in like 90 days. So the tagline for the course is make music you're proud of in 90 days or your money back. And that is the guarantee that I actually can stand behind because it works. Like it's like building a machine, you know, like if you do those steps in that order and you do all of the steps, you will make music you like, even if you've never made music before. I think a lot of people see that guarantee and they're like, that can't be real. But it is. It is. Like I've been teaching music for decades, you know. I've seen what works, I've seen what doesn't. I'm, you know, an open-minded person. I take feedback, I study, I change my opinion if my opinion is wrong. So the design has been continuously improved by like, you know, 15 years as an educator. So it works, and I can guarantee it works, and it's really affordable. And yeah, it's just turning out beasts. So yeah, it's really fun. You can check that out at theproducerspath.com. We're gonna have a special link for you too in the description, I imagine. And
Absolutely.
yeah, you should come check it out. Come see. you know, you've tried the rest. The dojo's
Now try
about.
the best.
Yeah, baby. See why it works. But yeah, it really does work. Yeah, I'm not like, I don't go around claiming to be the best at music, but for certain things in music education, I'm definitely the best.
I agree. I agree. One of my favorite things that I like to watch you do sometimes is like, say for instance, you have one topic, right? And you're talking about this topic, and you're like, yeah, I've seen people do it these other ways. Let me show you these other ways. And let me show you the problems with these ways. And then let me show you a way that works and let me show you why it works, kind of thing. And I'll literally watch you, like for instance your sidechain video, right? Your sidechain video, you're like, yeah, these are like the ways that I've seen it done, compressor, this, that, and the other. And then you'll actually show like the file, the audio that's coming out of it and whatnot, and show the actual, like, all right, you don't just hear this difference, you can see it, kind of thing. And that's what I always love about, you know, coming to your classes and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah, because you can never know until you devise a test, you know, because often the conventional wisdom is wrong. Like I spent so much of my life believing that hard digital clipping was musically useless and you should never ever use hard digital clipping. You're an idiot if you redline the Ableton Master, etc. And we now know that hard digital clipping is in fact the most transparent way to remove the micro peaks that are making your song sound like a mess and to do gain staging with precision without coloring the sound. Like, you think of clipping, you think of distortion, but it's actually just literally clipping the waveform off. And when it's a drum transient or something that's over in 15 milliseconds or less, your ear cannot hear that fast. Like, it's gone, and it's gone in a more transparent way. Like, you notice more of an audio quality issue with a limiter than you do with a clipper, which is like just completely flies in the face of conventional wisdom. But you know, there are a lot of things, and you can't know until you devise a test. That's the same thing with side chains. Like, even on MIDI envelope based side chains, if you do tests, they're always a couple milliseconds late. Like, you have to make the trigger come in at least 5 to 10 milliseconds before you want the side chain to go off, because even a MIDI envelope takes some amount of time. Or you can use the crossfader, the Ableton crossfader. I use that a lot for side chaining. And when it comes to people who are new, who are like, this is a lot to think about, I've actually been teaching people to do it with the crossfader. And that is so effective. And then when you want to make a fill, you can just leave it down and put a fill.
Yes,
It's
right.
awesome. I use it all the time. No latency, no processor use, no plugins, do all the channels at once, no routing. It's like awesome. You just put a track on crossfader side B or not.
There you go.
Yeah,
There you
Mr. Bill
go.
hates it though. We're doing a collab. I like leave the crossfader down. He'll be like, "Why isn't the sound playing?" And he gets all mad. But but yeah. So uh, it's there's always new things to learn. We're learning new things about sound. Like, we know how sound works in 2 dimensions, like in a DAW, pretty well, but we don't fully understand 3D sound yet. And even like in the last 10 years, they found out that sounds can make transverse sound waves, like not like just longitudinal waves, like the ripples coming out from dropping a rock into a pond, but actual like corkscrew laser focused sound waves. Like, you can like, when a laser is like a special kind of light wave that
Right.
is focused and does not deviate because of the way the waves are resonated and lined up. And they found that you can do the same thing with sound, and that it makes corkscrew sound waves in 3 dimensions. You can't do that in a DAW. That's not an option, but like, it's just an illustration of the fact that we still don't fully understand all there is to know about 3 dimensional sound in the world. And it's important to remember that about the DAW too. Just because everybody says something is right doesn't mean it is. The only way to know is to test for yourself using the scientific method and gradually expand the knowledge base, you know? So I always try to share that as much as I can, and it's been awesome that I get to do this with my life. I'm so grateful, like just to have something that's so fulfilling, and to see people that I've taught go on and become like my favorite musicians. Like a lot of my favorite musicians came up from the dojo. Like I listen to Chi all the time. He took my workshops. You know, I listen to Dr. Fresh all the time. He took my workshops. Apache, top of my playlist. Like EPROM took my workshop. G Jones, Minnesota. Like artists that I listen to every day
Yep.
are using
Yep.
the, you know, Bjork, Arcade Fire, all that. Like the artists I listen to every day. Rip Kenny, amazing. He's so good now. He's like
Agreed.
pretty famous too. People will spot my Rip Kenny shirt when I wear it in public.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, he's like over 1 million plays a year on Spotify and stuff now. He's
I'm
like
so
really
proud of
well.
him. I
Yeah.
remember the Human Music podcast. I'd see him all the time there, Fluke Rain and all of them. But I just want to say that I'm grateful for you and everything that you've done to the community, everything that you've done for my own work ethic, for my music and whatnot. And I just want to say it's been a pleasure to have you on. Do you have any last things that you want to let the crowd know?
Oh man, I mean it's really great to be here. Thank you so much for reaching out and hosting me on here. I'm really interested to see what the community has to say. So I'll be coming and checking the comments and stuff.
For
And
sure.
so yeah, please do ask any questions that you like. I mean there's the obvious like plugs like at Producer Dojo on YouTube. That's where all the educational stuff
All
lives.
links down below.
Yeah, I'm at L.Gates Music across social media websites. You can find me there, and it's ill.gates if you're typing it in to a search engine or whatever. I want it to be like an email address. Yeah, and then really, I mean, if I had to say one thing, it's just, you know, life is short. As long as you're not hurting anybody, do what you love. Love who you want to love, listen to what you want to listen to, make the art you want to make, and, you know, don't go spending your whole life doing what you think you should do, you know, because it's short and, you know, it's over before you know it. So get out there, get your hands dirty, make a mess, you know, pick your goals, do that shit. Whatever's meaningful to you, do it, because if you don't, you'll be like, wow, I gave my life away and now it's over. So
That loss aversion.
yeah, as long as you're not hurting anybody, you go do your thing, baby.
You go. Well, with that said, this has been another Lullaby Stories with this week's guest, ill.Gates, exclusively on Electrostep Network. Thank you guys all for coming out and watching the show, and take care. Have a great day. Cool.
All right, so I got a really awesome freebie for all of you out there too. I put together 10 of my favorite Ableton packs, many of which were $20 or more, into a pack that I call the EDM Toolkit. And you can get that 100% free at the edmtoolkit.com link below. So go in there. I really like the Steve Reich inspired minimalism Ableton processing racks that can like generate complexity for your melodies and stuff. They're pretty cool. And there's a whole class about Steve Reich, and you can learn about the roots of minimalism in composing for orchestras in the 60s and how that shaped the compositional techniques that we use today. So that Steve Reich class is also included with the Steve Reich racks, as well as tons of other cool sounds and, you know, the class on neurobass and all kinds of goodies. But yeah, that's at edmtoolkit.com. There's a special link in the description. So click that and get 10 free things that are each worth $20, and they're free. All you got to do is click the link and get them. All right. Lots of love.
Cool.
All right, so I got a really awesome freebie for all of you out there too. I put together 10 of my favorite Ableton packs, many of which were $20 or more, into a pack that I call the EDM Toolkit. And you can get that 100% free at the edmtoolkit.com link below. So go in there. I really like the Steve Reich inspired minimalism Ableton processing racks that can like generate complexity for your melodies and stuff. They're pretty cool. And there's a whole class about Steve Reich, and you can learn about the roots of minimalism in composing for orchestras in the 60s and how that shaped the compositional techniques that we use today. So that Steve Reich class is also included with the Steve Reich racks, as well as tons of other cool sounds and, you know, the class on neurobass and all kinds of goodies. But yeah, that's at edmtoolkit.com. There's a special link in the description. So click that and get 10 free things that are each worth $20, and they're free. All you got to do is click the link and get them. All right. Lots of love.